So, Andi Oliver, you have the rare distinction of being the first person ever to come back for a second time onto grilling.
Honestly?
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled by this because you loved me so much.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Plus, it's a time, there's not a lot of people around, they're on holidays, you're thinking...
Everyone's away.
Who will come to the opening of an envelope?
Oliver will come,
Andi Oliver.
just give her a call, she'll rock up.
Well, because thing is, last time you were on, we went through your history and obviously went through food like we're always going to do, and it's always going to be about food. One of the things that I realised that I didn't really talk to you about last time was growing up. Because your upbringing isn't kind of what I imagined, because your dad was in the forces.
He was in the RAF. So I started off in Kent, in Biggin Hill. All I remember about that really was that we used to go to school in an old control tower, and that on bonfire night, because bonfire night was the thing. Didn't used to do Halloween when we were kids. Halloween, nobody cared about Halloween. Bonfire night.
I hate Halloween.
I hate Halloween.
Do you as well?
I was so
I do.
annoying.
I can't be dealing with it.
Just annoying.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care if you're a sexy cat. Go away.
No, me neither.
You annoy me. Anyway. So, but on bonfire night, we used to get, like, they used to make sausages on the fire and have hot bovril, which is gross, that hot beef drink. Yeah. Hot beef drink, we'll call it. Yeah. But that hot beef drink and sausages and ketchup, and that's what I remember about Biggin Hill. I don't really remember much else. And the Red Arrows used to do things.
So was it weird though being, because was your dad in the forces for how long? What age?
Oh, so obviously it's from the time I remember thinking about things, so, from the time I was born, up until I was about 13 or something like that.
So all your formative years in many respects
were in the RAF, yeah.
And did you travel around, or were you UK based all the time?
We left Biggin Hill and we went to Cyprus, and we lived in Cyprus for about 3.5 years. Then we came back to London, and then we ended up in Norfolk and then Suffolk, which is where I landed, which is Bury St Edmunds.
And was it, because I used to quite a lot work with the forces, and the kids always used to say that they always felt, if not homeless, they felt that they weren't rooted anywhere.
It is quite odd. It is quite odd because you make friends with people and then they're just suddenly gone because their mum or dad gets posted somewhere. So you do have this kind of odd, almost disassociative, anxious thing underlying everything, because you're not sure if anything's going to disappear at any second. And there is, loads of people who grew up in the RAF are like performers and chefs. Did you know that? I'm constantly meeting people.
Is that right? Because they almost have to show off to kind of
just
make
show
their
off
way.
to get some attention.
But it makes sense.
No, it's quite interesting because there's a lot of people who grew up in the RAF who do the same things that we do, which is interesting to me. It is odd, but it's just your reality. And if it's just your reality, even though it's a bit odd, you just get on with it.
And what about from a cultural point of view? Because, even when I first started doing stuff with the forces, then the number of non-white faces, faces in the forces...
Like 5 of us,
Yeah.
It was weird. When I got to Bury... when we lived in Cyprus, actually, there were quite a few other families of colour, black families. And I think they were all of Caribbean heritage, actually. And they were mates with my mum and dad, and we used to have these big picnics and every weekend, and it was just idyllic. Cyprus was absolutely idyllic, and it's where I fell in love with food, actually. Yeah. I remember most of my memories of food, you must be the same, they're like food-based. Or
always.
Food. They start with, it was really good, and this is what we had to eat. And people are like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I loved it. It was 30, 50, 40 years ago, whatever it was, and I loved it. I remember people barbecuing octopus in Cyprus, and I was like, what? And I'd seen them killing the octopus on the stone, and then we went to the restaurant, and the man was barbecuing it, and it was the first time I made the connection between all the kind of cycle of life and food, and I ate it, and I just thought it was incredible. I thought it was magical that I'd seen this whole sort of cycle thing happen. And then my mum used to work in one of the offices on the base, and we used to love going to meet her because we used to get these halloumi, melted, cheesy loukania, the Greek sausages, in hot, fresh bread. These are my...
And it's funny because when you sort of say things like that, now you sort of think, okay, octopus, then, most of us would have tried eating octopus over the time. Halloumi, goodness gracious, you can't move anywhere without it. And yet we're going back to, say, up to the age of 13. So that is going back to, at the latest, 1976.
Yeah, I was probably like 8 or something, yeah.
Which is quite amazing. But what were you getting at home?
Well, my mum and dad were quite adventurous. They're from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
My dad's passed away now, but he's from the Caribbean. He used to cook a lot of food, but he was quite seafood orientated. There was a lot of squid, there was a lot of shrimp, there were a lot of crabs, anything like that. My dad was one of those big flamboyant cooks where he'd use every single item in the kitchen and then we'd all have to clean it up afterwards. Drive us absolutely mad. But he was a brilliant, brilliant cook. He was a brilliant event cook, like a brilliant sort of celebration. It's Sunday, there are 20 people coming over, let's do it. And he'd make, 5 chickens and piles of rice and all that stuff. And my mum was more the kind of cooking to make sure everybody stayed alive cook.
Because I remember when I was a kid and going to one of my friend's house and his mum was Indian. And I remember it was the greatest experience as a kid. If you got invited round to Atul's house for tea...
You were on.
Because I had never experienced it. And I just wonder, was there a similar thing would happen with kids from the camp?
I think people were quite keen to come to our house to eat, for sure. Because Mum always made proper food as well. She made rice and peas. She made it from scratch. They made chicken. They'd make all the marinades and all that stuff from scratch. So they made everything. It was like proper... big, fulsome, celebratory, exciting, delicious food. So people wanted to come around our house. I had a friend whose dad used to sit on the sofa and eat broad beans out of a tin.
Nice.
So she quite liked it round our house. For obvious reasons. She was quite keen to come over. And also that my brother was in the school band. Right. So they used to rehearse at our house. So all the fit boys were at our house as well. So not only was there food, there were fit boys and they were playing music. You're a winner.
If ever there's absolutely no reason, there's no way that you wouldn't have ended up doing...
the things that I do. I know.
What you do.
I think that, all of the... I'm lucky enough now, especially because I do a book show now as well, so I'm lucky enough that all of the things that I've ever loved in my life are part of my work. And I am... I promise you, grateful for it every day. I'm not even, people say, I'm really grateful. I actually am, genuinely. I sort of wake up and think, what next nice thing am I about to do?
Do you think as you've got older that you have become more proud or more aware of your heritage and history?
Oh, definitely. I think it's actually, I'm way more connected. And I understand it in a very different way. In fact, one of the things the pandemic has given me is an even deeper understanding of my connection to the Caribbean and further back. Makita and I, my daughter, when we filmed a series, 2-part films in Antigua, Barbuda and Barbados with BBC. We made this couple of films at the Caribbean with Andi Makita, and we did a DNA test. And it blew my mind, Simon.
So what did you discover?
So I discovered I'm 38% Nigerian. Okay. And the rest of me is like Mali, Senegal, Togo, like literally right down.
Did you know that?
No, not at all.
So what did you think then? What did you think?
I expected to have some African blood, because obviously the black people in the Caribbean aren't, we're not indigenous to the Caribbean. We were brought to the Caribbean, enslaved Africans were brought to the Caribbean to work the sugar. And but I imagined that there would be some indigenous Caribbean blood, and there's not one drop at all. Because the indigenous Caribbean people are sort of the Taino, the Arawaks and the Caribs, and they have a Latin American, South American heritage. So it blew my mind completely, and then I became really overwhelmed by it, to be honest, because it's something I'd understood intellectually my whole life. I then, for the first time ever, felt it emotionally, and it was huge. I sort of fell apart, to be honest. I was like crying for most of the day because it was just really overwhelming. In
a good way?
Yeah, in a good way, and in quite a painful way as well, just because of what they must have been through.
Yes.
But then I also feel incredibly proud. It was a word you used at the beginning of this question, actually, but I felt really proud to sort of be the person thriving now because of what my ancestors survived, and we thrive. We didn't just survive, we thrive. We're like magic people. That's the way I look at it. It's like we went through all of that, and here we are doing incredible things and like taking their name and honouring it. That's how I feel. That's
lovely. But so with that discovery, because everything is about food, you and I, it's all we talk about when we do the food, music and being old. Yeah. And your daughter.
And the daughter.
Yeah. And maybe the dog sometimes.
The dog, we call her Stupid Dog now. We don't even call her by her name anymore. She's just called Stupid Dog. Scout.
Okay, fine.
Scout, but we call her Stupid.
Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Because of food, because
Yeah.
you discover, if you like, a different heritage, one that you thought you had, did it made you investigate, say Nigerian, for example,
Well,
did it make you investigate more?
It's made me investigate. But what it's also made me understand is there's a brilliant academic and writer called Dr. Jessica B. Harris, and she wrote a book called High on the Hog, which is all about African food pathways and what soul food in America. She's African-American woman, and really the connection that African soul food has to Africa. And what it's made me understand are the food pathways between that whole coast of Africa and the massive span of the Caribbean territories. So if I look at a dish like pepper pot,
Yeah.
which is the national dish of Antigua, I realised that dish is intrinsically African. Dr. Harris calls it the African hand. And I just love that as a concept, because we talk about the hand in cooking all the time. In the Caribbean, we say, I love your hand, which means I like the way you cook and I like the way you extract flavour.
What a lovely expression.
I like your hand, right? And she talks about the African hand in Caribbean cooking and in African-American soul food. And what it's made me understand is that. So you look at a dish like pepper pot. I've got my grandmother's pepper pot recipe, and I've actually been making it exactly she used to make. She used to smoke her own oxtail. Smoked oxtail, Simon. It's a thing, do it.
Oh
it's
my
absolutely
goodness.
unbelievable. So you've got smoked oxtail, salt pork, salt beef, pigtails. It's got everything going on in it. You soak it all overnight and then you cook it up. And then you make okra and aubergine and black-eyed peas and loads of spinach and
Everything
edo tops. Okra.
You take as being
Yeah.
Caribbean heritage.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But then when you look and then you put it all together and you sort of bring the whole dish together and you look and you think, this is an African pot.
Yeah.
And it had never occurred to me before. So what it's made
Well,
me...
I'm glad, because I'm just thinking, I feel really ignorant now, because it's never occurred to me. And as soon as you say that, you go,
Yeah.
of course it is.
Of course. And there are things, obviously, in Caribbean cuisine. There's things from China, India, across Africa, from Britain, from Ireland, from, so many people, Portugal, so many people have trodden through the territories, for the good or the worse, whatever it is, we are where we are now. And they've left that mark, not just in our food. I was writing about this the other day, not just in our food, but actually, they've left that mark not just in our blood, but also in our food.
Yeah.
And it's on our plates. So it's fascinating when you look at a plate of Caribbean food, because it will take you to Nigeria, it will take you to Portugal, it will take you to China, it will take you all over the place.
It's always, the thing that always surprised me is that the Portuguese were the ones who introduced chilies.
Isn't that interesting?
And you sort of go, what?
That feels upside down. It feels upside down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yet no. And sweet potatoes, I think, came from somewhere else as well. So, I think that what's fascinating to me about that is that if you look at a plate of food, you can take it for granted, as we both have. Yeah. And then as soon as you start thinking about it, a whole universe of knowledge and understanding and thought and inspiration opens up. Because now I know that, I'm like, oh, right. Okay, so, and then I discovered that we have a dish in Antigua called fungi, which is basically polenta.
Yeah.
It's cornmeal, made into a porridge, quite a stiff one, and then you turn it in a bowl with a bit of butter, and you make these balls of cornmeal with it. Absolutely delicious. And then I discovered that it's also called fungi in Angola. So I'm like, oh wow, so Angola's in there somewhere as well. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
But honestly, I'm kind of feeling really, really ignorant, but I'm
No, but
glad,
I've only just learnt this stuff.
Yeah.
I've only just learnt this stuff, and I just find it endlessly fascinating.
Do you think then, because, for all of the kind of things that we know are kind of wrong with British society, I do think that from a food perspective and embracing others' heritage, I think Britain is quite a good place for food. I think that we're not afraid to embrace cultures from wherever.
I think the British palate is quite fascinating, really, because, we love it all.
Yeah.
We kind of want it all. As soon as British people started being able to leave this island and travel all over the world and come back, things have changed so drastically and so dramatically. I think there was a point, especially when we were younger, where you couldn't get nice food particularly easily, unless you went to somebody's house.
Yeah.
It was quite difficult, or you were very rich and could go to very fancy restaurants, and it still wasn't necessarily going to be nice.
But the restaurant industry was very different, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was kind of like, it was a steakhouse or, chicken in a basket.
I discovered a calf. I didn't discover a calf, like a street side calf, until I was 14 or 15. I'd never seen one, because Caribbean people don't really go. We never used to really go out for dinner and stuff. We did in Cyprus. When we got back here, they were not going out for dinner. And somebody took me to this place, and I was like, what is this place? And they're like, it's calf, Andy. I was like, what's a calf? And they're looking at me like, who are you, and what is the matter with you? And I was like, hang on, are you telling me I can get roast dinner here every single day? It blew my tiny mind. I was like, this is the best place in the world. How has nobody ever brought me to a calf before? And I've lived in them ever since. I think the British palate is really broad, really all-encompassing, and really quite adventurous, actually.
Yeah, I do.
And I think that started out as eaters, but more and more British people, everyday people, are cooking and learning skills and learning how to make a curry paste from Indonesia and how to make one from Goa and how to make one from Jamaica or Antigua or whatever, and learning about different herbs and spices and heat and warmth and all of the different flavours that we're always wanging on at each other about.
Yeah,
and I think it's an exciting place to be because of that.
I completely agree. So with Mikita, then, because I know that you cook together anyway, although when I say cook together, she starts...
near me.
Yeah, she tries to start and then you take over, is what she says.
She's such a liar, right? Sort of. Kind of. No, but I think that she over-eggs me being bossy in the kitchen. I mean, I try. Told you I didn't like him, didn't I? It's the second time. I'm telling you one more time, I don't like him, all right? I'm just trying to teach. What she's not good at, this is the problem, is me teaching her stuff.
Yeah.
It gets on her nerves.
Yeah.
So if I have information that I'm trying to impart or share with her, she's like, you're so rubbish. And I've said, no, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to teach you how to make a nice little curry sauce or whatever it is. And she's got better. And, when we got better with each other, we learnt patience, was when we drove across Asia together, when we did what is it called? We did a car rally.
Okay.
Across Thailand, Cambodia and Vietnam in a 1953 Morris Minor. And she can't drive, so I did all the driving. I was driving like 10 hours a day. We did it for the BBC. We did this kind of mad program. But after about day 2, we went, we're really going to have to work this out. This tiny little car together. Yeah. And we're going to have to learn how to be patient with each other. Otherwise, one of us is going over the cliff. Do you know what I mean? So we got it together and we started listening to each other really differently and really taking time to think about what was happening for the other person. And it was just a brilliant thing for our relationship, because that's what you want in any relationship. You want to be heard, and you know how to and learn how to listen, right? That's really important.
And how does she view the heritage that you've discovered that you have?
I think the same way. We realise that we come from this, and this is something we knew anyway, but we realised we come from this line of incredible women. And my grandmother, her great-grandmother, there used to be a place in Antigua called Johnson's Point that's not there anymore. But she used to go down to meet the fishermen, and she'd go and a couple of hours early, just as the sun was coming, go swimming naked every morning, my grandma. And she had 12 children. They're all extraordinary, my aunties and uncles, teachers and writers and actors and artists, and incredible people. And this Antiguan woman brought these children up in the most extraordinary ways. She's written her memoir. She wrote a memoir that we've all got. That's where the pepper pot recipe comes in, because the pepper pot recipe is in her memoir. And I feel that we are blessed in that way. We carry a very strong line of powerful men and women with us, and we feel it everywhere we go, and we're really happy and excited about it. It's like this amazing... It's like you taste the good clean air. We talked about this before, the good clean air at the top of the mountain. There's like a thing where you fill your lungs and you stand up to your full height and you pursue all the things that make you happy and excited that you really, really want to do. And that's how we both feel about it, actually. And
so what happens next with food for you? I mean, obviously, your media career is off the scale, you're writing, etc., etc., etc. But where do you see what happens next on food terms?
Well, for me, it's actually interesting because it is a continuation of this conversation, and we are starting. I'm doing an exhibition at the Commonwealth Games later this year with my Wadadley Kitchen project, and so we're starting to use food as a kind of cultural.
Just remind us what project is. So
the Wadadley Kitchen project is about exploring heritage cooking, and also it's about me taking old flavours that I grew up with and trying to do new things with them. So it's taking all the Caribbean flavours that I grew up with and doing new stuff with it to open up people's idea of what Caribbean food means, because people have a very narrow idea of what Caribbean food is. They think it's jerk chicken, they think it's rice and peas, and they literally think it stops there. And it's so much more than that, and there's so much going on. Like Ital cooking, for instance, which is essentially veganism, has been around for like 50 years in the Caribbean. You know, Rasta's brought that in, long time, bruv. It's not new, all right, people? And when we were talking earlier, and I was talking to you about that Christmas bush, that leaf that I found, it's like a cinnamon leaf. It's like, you know, when I'm in Antigua, I find all these incredible things, soursop and eddos, and a thing called cassie, which is like a cactus paddle that they peel, somebody sits there, takes all the spikes out, peels it around the edge, then chops it up and they steam it. Wow. And it's a bit like a cross between asparagus and okra. So there are all these incredible indigenous ingredients. There are things that have been brought in later, but it comes together to make this exciting cuisine, and I just want to share it with people so that they understand how broad and how exciting Caribbean food is. You know that the word barbecue is actually a Taino Indian name, and the Taino were the indigenous inhabitants of Antigua. So there's a few words like I think it's barbecue, hammock, and something else really odd. I can't remember. You just would never think was a... And the way jerk chicken was invented... Did I tell you this before?
No.
So jerk chicken happened up in the mountains in Jamaica because there were enslaved Africans who'd run away, and they were up in the mountains with the Maroons, who were another indigenous tribe, and they wanted to cook food, but they didn't want the smoke to be seen by the soldiers that were looking for them, so they buried it, the chicken, and they cooked it in smoke underneath these like bamboo mats, and that's why jerk chicken. The jerk chicken is not a paste. Jerk is not a paste. Jerk is a cooking method. There is a seasoning mix, but it's a cooking method. So jerk chicken should be smoky, and it should have that deep earthiness, and that's because that's how it was invented.
Love it.
Me too. It's endlessly fascinating to me.
But again, Joe, that's the thing, you know, knowing that you have that project on the go. And what do you see? I mean, do you see restaurants? Do you see kind of books?
At the moment, I'd like to do a Wadadley book after this book. I'm doing a book now, which will be out next spring. So I'd like to do a Wadadley book after this book. What I want to use Wadadley for, though, is a kind of jumping off point for conversation, for us to explore heritage and explore migration and explore identity and explore our sense of selves. We were just talking about, you know, looking at a plate of Caribbean food and realising that all these influences are there, and that stuff's in our bodies and in our bloods too, and not just black people or any people of colour, but everybody. We all come from everywhere.
And coming back to that whole thing, because it is always about food, it is the great unifier.
Yes.
You know, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you do, food is that great...
Food is the thing that ties us all together. Yeah, that's a brilliant way of putting it. A common universal language. You're very welcome.
Feel free to use that.
I will, don't you worry.
All right.
It's in the book. Common universal language. But universality is what it's all about, because I think at the moment we're told again and again and again what makes us different.
Yes.
And there are certain factions or powers that be that, you know, thrive on that.
They love that difference.
Yeah, and they
in
love
a negative
that.
way.
Yeah, the device. Yeah. I love difference in an exciting way, because I'm like, oh, well, so how did you grow up then? And then we put all that together, and that's how we move forward into the future. And I want to use Wadadley and the food that we make as a way of bringing people to the table to have these conversations so that we can move forward together, because I'm sick of talking about what makes us different, or what people are angry about. And, you know, I just want us to breathe and understand the past is the past at this point. We need to explore it. I think we should examine it.
And acknowledge
but we also need to be... we also need to be exploring how we're going to move forwards together and not just stagnate in bitterness or anger or upset from quite some time ago.
Because I've always sort of felt that from a positive point of view, and again, I always use food as the analogy, that almost rather than let's kind of look and argue about the differences. Let's celebrate the similarities.
Yeah.
We all eat, we want food, we want to be excited. I want to share what I cook with you and vice versa and those other people. I remember being invited years ago in sort of some of the first years after apartheid, and they do that amazing feast on Tabletop Mountain where you break bread together.
You've been at that?
And it was quite one of the most amazing experiences.
Really emotional.
Yeah.
Food with other people in particular moments in life is the most emotional moment you can get. It's that you know, there's a reason that the phrase breaking bread is something that's, it's not a cliche, it's rooted in this moment that we can all grab and grasp together if we just take a breath and sit down and learn to listen and learn to hear. I just think it's incredibly important.
Yeah. Cooking.
Yeah.
I also think is one of those things, and I know you're going to agree with me on this, that I think we've lost that skill. Like, you know, I've taught my kids to cook, and I know that you have. It's so important, and again, you look at it and think, celebrating heritage, whatever, whoever you are, cooking together, sitting down together, you sort of feel it moves a generation forward, it moves society forward.
It moves the family forward, it moves every single moment. That's why, you know, if you know, not everybody has a kitchen table, not everybody has that space, but just taking time to sit down together over a plate, there's something about the walls falling away, no matter how you do it. And it's just a moment of like, oh, stress relief and humanity. And we just need to, I just think it's so important to come back to that on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be a big sociological statement, but literally just a human moment with the people that you love as often as you can throughout the week, literally Monday to Friday. Don't wait for Easter or whatever it's going to be. Just do it. Just spend time with the people you love. And the best way to do it is over a plate of food or in the kitchen, over a pot, cooking together. People will tell you things when you've made them food that they wouldn't tell you an hour before. I mean, I know some stuff. I heard some stuff. Oh, baby.
So when you're Minister for Food then, in the next government, which obviously we know this is going to happen, so are there any particular plans that we're going to put in place, Andy, to kind of make Britain a better place for food?
Well, I mean, I think we're doing pretty well as a place of food, I've got to say. I do think people go. I would insist completely on them making sure that they bring back proper learning to cook in school.
Yes, me too.
Because it's just stupid. Yeah. It's like there's no point in shutting the door after the barn is what you know what I'm trying to say. I can never get that phrase right, but you know what I'm saying. The shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted. Yeah. Because, you know, once you're 45 and you can't get up the stairs, you already had it. Do you know what I mean? It's like teach people how to get good nutrition into their bodies.
45 and
I just had a picture of this woman that I used to know, okay? It's a long story. She had a problem. So I just think you know, I can't believe it when I meet kids who go, I don't eat vegetables. I'm like, which ones? Which ones? Yeah. They go, what do you mean? I'm like, there are hundreds. Which ones don't you eat? They're all very different. You're just talking rubbish. You don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, teaching people how to nourish their bodies, it should be one of the most basic, simple things that happens at school. And they've stopped. Apparently they do it at some schools, but they need to do it at all schools. And they need to do it really well. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That for me would be of the paramount importance.
So can I extend that a little bit further? So when you're Minister for Food and I'm your assistant, so here's my thing, right? So yes, I think schools should have it on the curriculum. I also, with our friends who are going to be in planning, so when any of the large supermarkets decide they want to build a massive hyperstore outside of town, then my proposal will be that we make sure that they then bring a cooking bus into deprived lower income areas where they don't have access to fresh food a lot of the time, and they teach them to cook, both adults and children.
I mean, you, my friend, are hired.
Am I hired? Oh, thank you.
For now.
It's a very, very proud moment.
But that's a really good thing. And I think actually though, getting commerce, getting like, you know, massive shops, huge kind of corporate organisations to back these kind of initiatives is massively important.
So it actually makes sense for them.
It's good for them, it's good for us, it works for everybody, and they need to put money back into the communities that
And we'll get a second term in government, Andy.
And we'll get a second term in government, and possibly
in our political
quite
party
a lot of free
that we haven't
crisps.
quite decided
I know you're quite keen on free crisps.
Fine, that works for me. All right, I've got one more thing I want to ask you. Now, I asked you this first time, so, you know, I'm going to get 2 for 1 out of you. So every time on Grilling, then we ask our guests to take me somewhere. So it can be anywhere in the world. We can be plane, boat, train, we can walk, we can cycle, wherever you want to be. And I want you to take me somewhere that you think I would love. It could be a Michelin-starred restaurant, it could be a little shack somewhere, it could be a sweet shop, whatever it is. But you and we're going to meet tomorrow and we're going to go.
And we're going to go there.
Where? Yeah.
Well, I think last time I took you to a shack, this beautiful seafood shack that I know in Antigua, didn't I? Which is a really wonderful place to be. So this time I think we're going to...
I loved that. It was really good.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it?
It was lovely,
I told you.
Tell you what, though, some of those prawn shells were pretty tough.
Yeah, pretty tough. I'm sorry about that. Next time I'll get them to do it first.
Yeah, and the garlic mayo was a little bit strong.
It was like a lot of garlic.
Yeah, it
they
was
could have confit it first, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think this time we're going to go a bit more personal.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to take you to southern Spain, up in the mountains, to my best friend Neneh Cherry's house. Wow. And me and Neneh are going to make you dinner because I like you, Simon. Even though I keep saying I don't, I do. And
what are you going to cook for? How beautiful!
And we're going to make you. Neneh's from Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
And she makes this peanut stew, this beef peanut stew that is beyond the beyond. Wow. So we're going to make that, and then I'm going to make you this. It's like a. So in the Caribbean, we call it seasoned rice.
Okay.
And it's I realise this kind of rice happens all over. There's jollof, there's pilaf, there's pilau, there's seasoned rice, there's risotto. It's rice with stuff in it, basically. But I made one the other day, and I had a block of beef dripping in the fridge, and I used lardons in it. And everybody kept going, why is this rice so amazing? I'm like, it's got loads of meat fat in it, basically. But I'm telling you, bruv, I'm going to use that bomba rice, that beautiful fat Spanish rice that you use in a good paella or a good, arroz caldo, they call it. So I'm going to make you one of those. Nana's going to make the peanut stew, and there'll be a big, crisp, gorgeous salad and a beautiful bottle of wine, and Nana and I will chat to you. How's that? Want to come?
Honestly, I'm 100% in. Will you both sing for me?
We will both sing for you, because it's a fantasy. So.
Yeah. I should probably stop there then.
There are people here, Simon. But we'll make you good food and we'll have good wine. Yeah. And we'll be up in the mountains, and she's got beautiful houses.
If ever there was a perfect end to this, it's that. So we are culturally moving from all around the place. Absolutely. We're going to Spain, eating Sierra Leone, and we're eating some kind of rice that's Caribbean, which may well be African-based.
But it's from the rice is from Spain.
Yeah. With the Scouser. There couldn't be a better end.
Fantastic.
Always a joy to see you.
Always.
Keep safe.
Give me a hug.
Love you lot. See you soon.
Too.
Andi Oliver, superstar.
Cheers, darling.